Good to go.
So we read The Gone Away World by Nick Harkaway. I believe that this was his first published book, although he had some shorts before this. Yeah. And he is the son of famous author Shane, fill in the blank.
No, not me. John Le Carre.
Yes.
Macare. Is
Oh,
that also a non de plume?
I think that's also a nom de plume, both of
Yeah.
them, Nick Harkaway. Um, Jean Le Carre has passed away, and Nick has written his last two books, not as his father, but as a continuation of the
A
protagonist
la Brandon Sanderson Wheel of Time type thing.
type thing. Yes. So,
Gotcha.
what is everybody's first impressions of the book? Um, I'll go in a circle. And my Lisa, you're first.
okay. I found it was sort of hard to read, and then it would pull me in. And then it would get a bit harder to read again, but then it would pull me in. And so it was like that. Yeah. So I'd say overall I enjoyed it. I was compelled by the story. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to pass it to somebody next?
Oh, sure. Next person on my screen is Sarah.
Oh, hello. Am I? Oh, yeah, I'm on. I couldn't finish it. I really tried, guys, but my major problem with it is also the reason I just couldn't finish because I was trying to finish it today. It's entertaining, but it rambled and fuck did it ramble. And I just felt like I love me a bit of Douglas Adams, like Kirsten. We love Jasper Ford, So I don't. I'm down with the nonsense and stuff, but I just felt like there was like he took all five ideas and couldn't. One or two of them was good, and yeah. So my I also feel the title misled me because it's called The Gone Away World, but it wasn't. It was about the go away war. And I feel like if you'd written it, I would have, I felt misled. I thought because we were introduced to this world, and then we didn't spend most of the time there. We spent the entire time basically in, the backstory leading up to it and in the war. So that was my big thing about it. It would be interesting to see if, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the group, if he's improved as a writer, like if he's got a better editor helping him, like wrangling in his entertainment and his ideas. I did kind of clock the twist. I got as far as the twist, and that's kind of where I was like, I can't. I was trying to listen to it tonight and fell asleep. Sorry. And Alyssa, you'd be very proud of me because I went from 1.25 to 1.5 to try and get through it, and then for about an hour tonight, I went to 1.7.
Oh,
And
wow.
still don't feel like I missed anything because it just went on and on. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Looking forward to hearing from others. Shane, through to you.
I what did I think of the book when I read it? Um, I was also a bit thrown when we went back into the past, and I had a different experience because it was the first time in a long time that I had like a book with one of those where I grew up bits that didn't just bore me to death. I completely understand what you say about like, hang on, I signed up for a different part of this story, and normally like when I see those, there's just like I grew up on what whatever the background details are, and they become relevant later on, but the stories in them are so dull. This one kept moving, for me at least, um, and was fairly, yeah, I don't know, all the ideas, like I didn't see any of them particularly coming, or like I don't know what I want to say about them. Like, yeah, no, it all seemed like interesting and good fun, and uh, along. I found it an interesting book. Kirsten.
I agree with what Lisa and Sarah said and I think that similar things for the same reasons. So what Lisa said about it like grabbed me in and then I wasn't interested again. And
I had that. I was like, oh, I'm really into this, and then I lost complete interest, and then I got into it, and then I lost interest. And I think it's because of what you said, Sarah, that it was rambling. Now that I know the ending, I think that was the rambling stuff was a deliberate choice, and it makes sense. But as I was reading it, I was just like, oh my God, get to the point. And like he'd get to the end of some rambling tangent and then go back to where he was at. And I was like, I completely forgot we were even at this point in the story because he was
Yeah.
on this tangent about some other weird thing. Now that I know the twist, it makes sense that he's rambling on these tangents because it's like, I'm trying to be a little bit less, I don't know if I'm allowed to be spoilery here or
Oh
not.
yeah, yeah. For anyone who happens to watch this, we're gonna spoil the fuck out of this, so
Yeah.
just get
I
over
wasn't
it.
sure if
Plus,
that because you said you
I
hadn't
need
finished, but
people to
yeah,
spoil this for me because the Goodreads spoilers are from 11 years ago and they've changed how they formatted and I couldn't cheat and they wouldn't show me. So I need you guys to spoil this for me.
yeah. So the fact that he's not really a real person and he's kind of
Yeah,
like been dreamed up by Gonzo, I'm
yeah,
like, well, it kind of makes sense because it's almost like that thing in dreams where you go off on tangents and it seems to make sense to you, but it,
mm,
like, and I'll get into more detail later, but I did kind of at the end go, oh, okay, that's probably why he made that choice to do that. But it was super annoying to read. Like I was like, oh God, get back to
yeah,
the point. I was enjoying that like scene, and then you went off on this weird tangent. So
yeah. I definitely
I
think not to just to add to that because I think that's a really important point. The part about the tangents of characters, like being like telling the backstory of characters that he shouldn't know, that was
yeah,
really integral.
I
And I
was
did, but
also
I liked those though. That was the thing. I really enjoyed those. So I just
But
want to
I
put that out
kept
there.
thinking, what perspective? I was like, hang on, this is in first person. So why are we now talking about what this character here is thinking and feeling and what they like? How do you know that? You're saying it was like it was jumping point of view. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
now that I know the twist, it makes sense. And this is why, Alyssa, I was like, I'll be interested to hear. Oh, Shane, did you read it twice as well? Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys thought about reading it through a second time and knowing or what the twist is.
Mm.
Alyssa, I
Hello?
can't hear you.
Okay. Yes, as you said, I read it twice. The first time was, I don't know how many years ago, and I loved it. I flew through it. It was so engaging, and I absolutely, it was great. I said, Shane, you have to read this. This is amazing. And he did. And this time I'm like, holy fuck, this is long. Holy fuck, this is rambling. Oh my God. What the, and honestly, I did not even remember the twist. I was so surprised when I got to it the second time because his backstory was so well done. And knowing that twist that he was Gonzo, it really fell in place and I enjoyed it. But even so, finishing it was a bit of a slog. And with the book group taking a couple months off, I actually put it down at 95% so that at least the ending would be fresh. And it was hard getting through that last five. I was less engaged again. And it was a lot sillier than I remembered. Like it's just, oh my God, it's like a clown show and they really throw everything at you. And I appreciated it for its
Are you
art.
talking about the mime troupe?
They were always silly the whole way through the
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, no, I found it extremely silly, but I actually also found it engaging. So I am sorry I picked it for its length, and I apologize to people, but I did enjoy it the second time as well. Okay. What's the next questions to ask?
I want to talk about the twist and I wanted to ask where people pegged it.
Right,
The
good
twist that he is
question.
basically Gonzo's imaginary friend, effectively turned real.
I didn't figure it out until it was spelt out. I knew something was weird, and I thought maybe that when he got the stuff on him, he'd gone to like an old, like maybe I'm like, oh, maybe the people that have gone away are going to another dimension. Like, because you know how they made stuff disappear. I'm like, well, maybe that all that stuff that disappeared went to another dimension, and that's where he's gone. And in this dimension, everything's different. So that was
Yeah.
kind of what I thought had happened in the first place before they spelt it out.
Yeah, I did as well. That's a really good interpretation. It just that made sense. It's like all of a sudden he's not recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, so my first thought, I knew there was something because he didn't have a name. So that was a big thing for me. I was like, that's usually a thing because I think it's a Catcher in the Rye. He doesn't have a name either. Like I
No,
always
is
think
his name
about those books where
Holden?
protagonists
What's his
don't have
name?
names.
I'm sure he
Holden
has a name.
In
Caulfield.
Rebecca, the protagonist doesn't have a name
I
in
know what it is.
Rebecca
At Fight
either.
Club. Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that
Yeah.
will make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was my big trigger for me, was Fight Club. I was like, he
Yes.
doesn't have a name. There and then the thing that I thought it might be though is I thought he might be the ghost of the brother or the brother somehow. That
Well,
was what I
I
thought for a long time. I thought the brother, this is somehow the brother spirit soul in this world. But then the university bit then threw me because he was actually quite his own being through university.
And
the
Well,
thing
yeah,
is,
I
sorry.
think I think you're right about he being the brother because that's who Gonzo was initially pulling in,
Oh,
you
please,
know.
yeah,
That's
because
what
I
I was
haven't got,
about
I
to
didn't get that
say.
far. I'm still in the truck wanting to know more
Oh,
about the
see,
twist because
yeah,
we're
there's a
rambling
bit
again.
where he goes to see Gonzo's parents, and they
Oh,
say, and he says something about, "Do I look like Gonzo or something?" And they're like, "You don't look like Gonzo," and they don't say who he looks like, but I'm sure it was
ah,
quite heavily
heavily
implied that he looked like
implied.
the brother.
Yeah.
so he was channeling his brother because his brother was his conscience. That makes sense.
Cool.
Or his
Never
brother, I
caught
mean,
that.
they were 5 when Gonzo made him up, and his brother had
Mm.
just gone to uni or something, so he
It,
missed his brother and he
yeah.
Yeah.
loved his brother, and he's like his brother played with him, so his imaginary friend was like the older brother,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
took on some of
I
those.
I actually so I the one thing that struck me very early in the book is just how he describes everything as if he is a passive observer. Like
Yeah.
it just he's not yeah, he's just describing everything as if he's just passively flowed along with it and not
Yeah. Like
and it
watching the
actually bothered
parents.
me for a while. It's like, why isn't this
Yeah.
this guy, the way he describes things, it seems almost detached in some strange way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the bit where I pegged I think he's Gonzo, is when he was like in the torture chamber, basically possibly about to be
With
executed
Copland? Copland?
with Copland.
Copeland.
Yeah, and at that
Copland.
point I
Yeah. Yeah.
went, and he's like completely oblivious, and I'm like, I don't this sequence. I just at that point I thought I think he's actually Gonzo, like almost like split
Oh,
personality
Interesting.
thing. And it did make me think of Fight Club. But then when the alter ego thing happened, like after the stuff fell on him,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then they were in this strange reality where no one recognized him, I doubted myself at that point. Like I'm like, oh, okay, no, I obviously had that wrong, but they're in some kind of alternate universe or something, alternate timeline. And it was only when then they said, oh my gosh, he is actually Gonzo's like imaginary friend, that I was like, oh, okay, it was that. But
Sh-
yeah.
Shane, you haven't spoken to this question of
no.
Lisa's.
Oh, well, so Lisa, you were spot on. He was that was the split. He just wasn't in another body yet until the war happened to them. No, it was when he got hit by the stuff, or possibly even after, um, when he gets kicked out of the truck, I suspect.
Ah,
Mm.
Um, because he gets hit by the stuff and oh, okay, so here's where they split, or he splits and didn't quite follow. It gets pretty dreamy from there back home, not being included, and um,
Mm.
so possibly not until it got spelled out. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't
I
perfectly recall, but way late.
I thought it was like, I'm like, how dumb are you, man? When he got back home and he's like,
Yeah,
Gonzo's having an affair with my wife. And I'm like, And he rearranged your whole house without you noticing. How are you not thinking that this is something else? Like,
Yeah,
A
Yeah.
new
Denial is
reality.
good, but come on.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
complete new
Yeah.
reality. And that's the interesting thing is as part of Gonzo, he should have recognized the house still.
Do
So
you
it
think, I
Wow.
was just
Oh,
thinking about something
interesting.
Shane said before, because they split,
mm,
was part of, then the house became very
yeah,
vanilla. Like, the chair was IKEA instead of something. Like, was the
Oh.
fact that they split, is that like part of why it had so much depth was when they were together, but a safety within themselves. And then even though they split,
Yeah.
the reality split. And I don't know because I haven't gotten that far. But I kind of feel like that makes sense, that
mm,
part of the protagonist's outlook was to give the world richness. And
yeah,
that's why the house had, like, he spends so much time describing their home, their
Yeah.
weird V-shaped home, like, right?
Yeah.
And to walk in and basically be like, this is very, like, because there was a bit, it's only because I've just listened to it, he talks about taking Leah into a show home essentially and Leah crying. Do you guys remember that bit?
Oh,
Because it was
yeah.
too perfect and stuff.
I
And then
forgot
when they
about that.
split and they walk back into the house, it's essentially kind of, it's just not as personality driven. I
Hmm.
wonder if that's, which is very clever, but also you kind of like, yeah, um,
it would be interesting
yeah,
You,
that the split also caused somewhat of a rewrite of the past as well as the present.
or
mm,
yeah, or it's
Um,
a
mm,
split.
but it
It's
is a
like
really weird world we're in where stuff.
it's true.
I kind of viewed it as it's a bit like alternate timelines, like and it's kind of like in Back to the Future where it's like, well, now if you go backwards, the whole backstory is rewritten and
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
original timeline doesn't exist anymore because I
Well,
feel like when he was part of Gonzo, made Gonzo a better person, and now we're in the
Mm,
timeline where Gonzo's not as good a person because he doesn't have this influence
yeah.
anymore, and so
mm.
he's a he's a worse person in this version of the world.
Yeah, what happens, by the
Um,
way, in the last third of the book? Because I didn't get there. As I said, I fell asleep trying to listen to it.
Good question. I
Oh,
was going to say, Saz, um, something that may not be clear, probably isn't clear yet, and I don't think is clear to me even at the end of the book. But Gonzo uh, decided that he was not the kind of person who cared about stuff or bothered about stuff, and his
stuff as in
imagine
the stuff from,
life, difficult things in
right.
life, are
Yes,
not
which we
Gonzo's
definitely
problem.
got, which we absolutely got from the protagonist's point of view.
Yeah,
yeah.
so he has an imaginary friend slash alter ego who was good at all of that sort of thing, and
Mm,
Gonzo didn't bother with it.
mm,
So what happened after he gets thrown out of the truck? Does anybody
mm.
want to jump in? Or
I
before he gets
haven't
thrown
read
out of the truck?
very
I've
well.
met the K's.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that was confusing for me. I
Yeah.
I'm
still don't
very,
really know what was
this is
going
what I
on
mean.
there.
I'm just confused because it's, once again, we're rambling and I want
It
to, like,
becomes does become a sort of a save the world, continues to be a save the world
okay.
story. Where our protagonist hatches a plot to actually go and confront what was the name of the corporation that owned the
Young,
Bergamot.
Young,
York
York,
York
Jorgmundo.
Yorkman. Yeah,
Yorkman,
Yorkman.
yeah, and
Yorkman?
finds out who the evil face behind Yorkman is, and not who he thought it was going to be, and then turns out no, it's sort of not quite that straightforward, but and uh and in the process, like Gonzo kind of gets swept up into sort of,
He gets captured.
he gets
Recruited.
captured and
But the recruitment happened before this split,
Um,
right? Like if you track the timeline back, like this is why I'm saying I think the timeline's completely changed in this version of the world.
Mm.
Like in this version of the world, the reason that they were there was because Gonzo was working for them. Like, or am I
Right.
getting that wrong?
they're all working for Jurgmond and helping the pipe, making sure that the pipe is working. what they uncover is the mystical stuff called Fox that cleans up
Oh,
the
yeah.
stuff and makes the world look like our world, actually comes from prisoners, slaves who they have done nasty work to their heads. So these people see stuff and they have no interpretation at all. So the stuff just falls away and becomes Fox, and then you can use it to clean up the world. But to get enough people to create that, they've had to be nasty, grab people,
To entire
decapitate
villages.
their minds, and
Yeah.
And
so
have them in like prisons where they're just exposed to stuff and then
that's what they have to go and fight against. Even though once you do that, the world's going to be just wacky doodle again.
Yeah.
He also falls in love with Elizabeth, which is a nice little twist.
That's
Yeah,
nice, because I
that's
did
sweet.
I was like, there's a lot of setup here for it not paying off.
Yeah.
Nice. So Gonzo stays with Leah, and our protagonist gets back with Elizabeth, who wouldn't have. So this
He
is another
actually
thing.
gets back with him to really like it's very much he takes the lead on that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, very much.
What happened? Sorry, I missed. What was that?
She actually is like she initiates getting back with him. Really, like he's a bit.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth
Nice.
does. It's very.
Does she recognize him, even though he looks like
in a
not
way,
like Gonzo?
yeah.
She
Okay, cool.
recognizes him for who he actually is, almost.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Because she
His
trained
personality.
with Master Wu, so she
Yeah,
can see
right.
beyond that. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry to
Yeah,
ask so
and the
many questions, but
ninjas
you
come
guys
back,
are faster
by the
than
way.
he is. Like, I was like, there's 5 hours left in this. How? And that's at 1.7.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
The K's and the Mime Combine are the freedom fighters from Ade Katir, who were also the he met while he was at university, who was over talking about liberation and freedom and stuff and philosophy.
right.
Jogmund and the bad guy Pessel are also the ninjas that were after
Dr. Wu.
Dr. Wu.
Yeah.
Master Wu.
Yeah.
Master Wu, sorry.
Yeah.
Is Pessel who is Pessel? Is he
Big
the
evil.
doctor? Is he the scientist?
You might not have met him yet. No.
Okay.
He's
We didn't meet him in the beginning. Okay.
He was
CEO.
Was he not there right at the beginning?
Yeah.
The pencil neck.
He-
No,
Little
no, it wasn't.
pencil
It was
neck
Dick
was
Wash
there.
was at the beginning.
He's not Dick. He's not Dick.
But he's there as
He's like
another
Dick Wash's
person. Like
boss
they
or
don't
something.
realize who he is until
I think we meet Pessel first. Dick Wash has a party, and
Dick
our
Wash.
guy, our guy like maneuvers his way into the city, and then this party in quite nicely described ways, where you just show them what they expect to see, and corporate types are like, oh, okay, you look like a serious, frightening corporate type, so whatever.
Right,
And
right.
I think
Yeah,
we first
but
meet
no, we-
Pessel when he comes to the party, or do
but
we
we
first meet
realize that
Pessel?
Pessel is someone else. That
Yeah,
does-
that's what I thought. I thought
Yeah.
Pessel we'd met before, or is it just
Yeah, he was someone from the war.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure
that's
there was
good.
Someone that he knew in the
I
war.
can't remember exactly,
It's
but
like, oh, it's you kind of thing. I didn't realize it was you.
It's
Mm.
not the Bay, is it?
No,
No,
the
no,
Bay
Not
the
the
Bay is good.
still
I
a
think the
freedom
Bay is
fighter.
our
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, don't let me down about the Bay, because
No,
the
no,
Bay
no.
was
And-
the only one speaking some truth and some sense about the Yorkman people, which was really sad. But as someone whose company has just gone through a corporate buyout, is like, oh man,
no.
this is so true.
Oh no.
Yeah, not that it's like it's just that's the way of the world, right? It's just that's
Yeah.
the way of the world. Yeah, and it was, but it's just like, you just go,
So long as they're not
Oh.
like changing the brains of towns of people to save in the because they just so
To
long as the
advance
company
their-
that's bought out isn't doing that.
no, we're not doing that. No, nothing,
it's that
nothing that bad.
age-old question of do the ends justify the means kind of
Yeah, and there was that scene which was just before, well, where they got so on the pipe 60,
Yeah.
60, where they wouldn't go through the village of
Oh, the found thousand.
The
Yeah.
Found Thousand.
Yeah, I
Thank
wanted
you.
to talk about the found thousand.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was actually, I really loved that as far as a theme, because we'd also been introduced to the guy who liked to eat dogs. I've forgotten his name.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
Paul, was it Paul?
Yeah.
I think so.
yeah. And then he becomes, obviously, when the personality split, and because who was the guy? Because that was such a that scene where the guy goes into the lake and then he splits with himself. Do you remember? Is it Castle or something?
Right. No, that wasn't Pestle. Pestle doesn't show up until
No, Castle or something. Like he's like the all American GI, or no, all British kind of thing. Like
Is he
I can
the
be
guy
a.
they used at the end as the first fox making guy? It was one of
Oh
those
yeah,
guys.
I think he was.
Was it?
Yeah,
I think
because
he
I thought
was.
he couldn't. He lost his short term. He had no memory
so
anymore, so he
he
couldn't
couldn't
imagine things.
do anything with stuff, and so stuff got turned to fox around him.
Because the stuff
Oh,
makes the things
because
you
he
imagine
joined
come
Ruth
real. When
Kim.
you can't imagine anything, it
Right.
like neutralizes it. So, and then they couldn't find enough people that naturally had this no being able to imagine things, so they just like made people brain dead basically. So they
Right. Yeah. Ruth Kim. He joined Ruth Kimmer's team.
Yeah.
And then but that was the big thing so when it happened to our protagonist in Gonzo, that set up told me everything I needed to know about what happened to Gonzo. I was like, that setup explains it. It's because he went into it to say it wasn't something, because I kind of had Lady of the Lake vibes, the hand coming up and everything, and then I realized it's actually himself split somehow. So but who won, we don't know. So it was kind of that was also why I was like, to your point, Kirsten, like, you've been here, you know what this is. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, that's
It's such a like thing that thing of you don't know you're dreaming when you're dreaming kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say, Shane?
And also with stories, like when the author is like revealing something and implying it, and you're sort of like, yeah, I got it. Okay, I got it. Your character has to notice at some point here, because it couldn't be much more obvious.
Yeah.
No, it was good. I think the person with the head injury was a different random NPC that we didn't meet before the thing, but I could be very wrong.
I can't remember. I recognized the name when they brought it up, and we've met this person before, but I forgot which person it was.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I talked over you, Kirsten.
Sorry.
I'm actually not. I'm actually.
I think you're right, Kirsten. I think you're right, Kirsten.
Yeah,
I'm not
I just
sure
couldn't
about
remember
this,
names.
but I think
was okay. That is one of my biggest complaints about the rambling, is I couldn't remember anybody's names, because by the time we came back to them, I was like, all I remember is Sally and Gonzo and Lee. Like, it was just so hard to remember. I could not remember anybody and what their distinguishing features were. Like, he would talk about some guy who had one eye. I'm like, and I'm like, they're all just a blur of characters in this company. I have no idea who anybody is, because we met them at the beginning, and I thought we'd get to, and then which was kind of a bit of an issue.
Yeah. So when we meet Pestle, he's not a bad guy. He works for the Jargamon company, and he's their contact and selling them this truck so they could put out the fire in this. But I think what happens is during this event, we find out that he is the enemy, because he's actually set this up to destroy them, and that's because they're the last people who are part of the Master Wu, like
dragon.
Or at least that's what he thinks.
Wu.
At least he thinks the Pestle thinks they're he's trying.
Yeah, because he doesn't know Elizabeth, right? Or did he kidnap Elizabeth?
He does not know Elizabeth.
Well, Elizabeth's in hiding, so
So
like Elizabeth is disguised and only reveals herself to the main character.
That's
when you're like, and it had one of those moments of surprise, it was me all along.
Scooby-Doo.
It was very Scooby-Doo, actually.
It was.
To the point where I think he comments about how now that he looks back on it, her disguise was actually crap.
And her fake moustache and
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I
And then the
had
mimes. Like
oh, the
all the
mimes.
mimes are
I
part of
knew at the moment he
Boo's.
started talking, and I was like, "Oh no!" But this is also so nonsense, and of course, there's mimes in this.
That's right. I
Um,
was going to say with the, sorry, were you saying something there?
no, no, carry on. I do want to bring up my favorite character at some point. I'd like to know what everybody's favorite characters are, but
For sure.
carry on, Shane.
I was going to say with the mimes, so and the bay. Um, so I think what is happening, metaplot, is that our mercenary haulage and repair company are like competent, and that's where our main character Gonzo and things are. And I think the mimes are sort of shadowing them and following them round while the company is being recruited or targeted by Jogman Company, looking for an opportunity. Like, this company is good. Maybe they can help us get rid of the pipe or do something with the pipe, but they're buying all of the corporate PR bullshit right now. So we're not going to reveal ourselves, and we are just going to be around being weird little mimes. So when the main character gets hit by stuff, separates from Gonzo and blah blah blah, that's why they are on the scene to pick him up after he gets dumped out of Gonzo's truck.
Which was
And so,
really like, yeah, that was kind of like, wow, that was good timing.
because otherwise, like, what? Where did this half of the plot come from all of a sudden?
Yeah, I have to admit, I got really lost and just figured that he was injured and hallucinating, and I didn't know
Yeah,
what he was hallucinating. And I was also listening at 1.7 speed, so it was blah, 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 and that's
fair enough.
kind of where I
That's
started
right.
napping. Uh,
Yeah.
Favorite
I'm going to talk about
characters.
my favorite character, and actually, kind of one of my favorite parts, which was I loved Ronnie Chung. He's my favorite character. I loved him, and all. Have you guys seen Crazy Rich Asians?
No.
I
No.
haven't.
Okay, there is actually an actor who's called Ronnie. He's Ronnie Chiang, but he was in my head the entire time, and because even listening to the, and I just thought absolutely, and I loved that whole idea, which is probably based on fact, but the car, the automobile being the most dangerous thing, and then doing tactical. That was awesome. I loved that. That was the bit that I was like, this whole bit is great. I am really, because it was like having a montage, but like in a really awesome what's his name? Who wrote Project Hail Mary?
Andy
Oh,
Weir.
Andy Weir.
Andy Weir, but in a kind of a here's the reason, like, and it was just, yeah, it was really cool. And then it would keep coming back if this person went to the Rody Chung car driving school. It's like, yes, I loved it. Anyway, he was great, and his insults and his quick, like, were just, he was my favorite. He really stood out. He was so well formed. Anyway, he was.
Which was partly, I think, why you don't actually realize that. It took me a while to realize that our main character didn't have a name at that point because he kept getting called really insulting names by Ronnie Chung. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm
I
proud of
noticed.
myself that when he said, "What's the most dangerous?" and I'm like, "The car."
I was doing the
Nice one,
same thing. I
Lisa.
was yelling it because I was listening to an audiobook and I'm saying the car. And I was driving at the time too. And I'm like, it's a car. It's a car.
It's a car.
Nice.
No,
Very
And
nice.
Kirsten.
I'm looking at that paragraph right now, and someone says, the human body, and he says, my body's a lethal weapon. Yours is a sack in which you keep your
The
vital
narrator,
organs.
the narrator actually did such a good job with that character too. You know, in a Ray Porter way, he was so like,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually, the narrator, like, the narrator has
was
to read a
good in
lot of
general, I
nonsense,
think.
but that character,
Yeah.
I think the way he embodied him was just, he really stood out. He had a very oh, I like Green Kitchen with the Darker Woods. I agree. Um, just he really stood out, and I really like that character a lot. I think it's also because, like you said, a lot of what the character is doing, the protagonist is doing, is observing, so we actually don't hear Sally speaking, we don't hear Jim speaking, we don't hear Sam
Right.
speaking,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We're just like, oh, Sam was like this and Sally went off and negotiated and came back, and I asked her a question, she nodded. It was like that, whereas this was a
Yeah, that's
character
what I
who
was
was
saying
having,
about he's just like
yeah,
a passive writer in life
yeah.
for most of the time.
Yeah, and I didn't really
Mm,
pick up on that until you said that, Lisa. And then I'm like going
Yeah.
through my mind and going,
Which
why did this character stand out so much? Because it was, I got Ronnie's worldview. I completely understood it. It made complete,
Yeah.
like, wasn't an observation and then an explaining of the observation. It was a very well-rounded, and the same way I understood Master Wu, you know?
I liked Master
Yeah.
Wu. When you
Yeah.
said who was your favorite character, I was like, I don't think I have one. And then was thinking of Master Wu and the Tupperware container, and I was like, I
Yeah.
actually kind of liked him. Even
Yeah.
though that whole sequence, it's like that's
And the
another
little
good point.
bells, like the bells anywhere that you think might just be decorative, but no, they're actually there for a pretty good reason.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
you
What were
can
you
hear.
what were you
Yeah.
going to say about them, Kirsten?
About the fact that now looking back on it, knowing that what we know about our main character, the whole way, because I did at the time think it was really weird the way he was like, maybe this is what happened, and then he describes in detail this one scene of like this
The
one thing happening,
ninjas.
and then the next scene that he describes is another detailed thing of what happened, and I'm like, but which one was it, and how do you know? Like,
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
so, but
It
yeah,
was an interesting story. Yeah.
Weird way to structure it.
Mm.
I think my favorite character, both of those were excellent, but I will give a vote for Ma Lubitsch and her bees.
oh yeah, that was
Oh no,
great.
that's Pa Lubitsch.
Pa
He has
Lubitsch
the
has the
Ah,
bees.
bees, right?
He
Yeah,
has the
yes.
bees. Ma
fantastic.
Lubitsch doesn't want her husband fussing around with her, but it's pretty great.
You
And
did.
it's when I warmed up to it was the whole burning a hole in the lake scene. That's where I was like, okay, if we're on a tangent, this isn't a bad one.
Nice.
It was good, yeah. And like you said, Lisa, that like when you were saying like observation, that was also the thing. Like why I thought he was a ghost is that he had that observation of watching Ma and Pa Lubitsch like hugging and holding each other, and because she
Mhm.
was missing her son, she was worried for her new, and that's why I was like, you don't know that you're like you're like you're a fly on the wall. So yeah, I had that same sense as you, and that was the scene that I thought was the one, because I was like, yeah, there was something that threw me, and I want to ask you guys what you thought about this. There was a bit where he talks. The protagonist says, I would pop in, like this is during university or just after university, I can't remember. And he says, I'd pop into Ma Lubitsch and she would, feed me, and then I would go to my home, and sometimes someone would leave a plate out for me. Do you guys remember that being mentioned? Because I was like, oh, well, we're going to find out later, like what?
He
Yeah,
goes
okay,
to
Shane,
his
you're
own
nodding.
family's home. Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember that too. He talks about going to the Lubitches,
hmm
and then he talks about going, and then occasionally I go there, and then there'd just be a meal out for me. So I was like, what do we think that was about now in hindsight?
Right at the after he's kicked out of the truck after the split with Gonzo, where
Mm,
he's um trying to figure out what's going on and what his life is,
mm,
and he's
mm,
connected back up with Elizabeth, and he takes her
mm.
to his old family home
Yeah.
and shows her looking in the windows, and then they find the spare key or break in or something, and the only thing that's like he remembers is what you can see through the windows.
Mm.
He's never been in
Oh,
the home before.
Yeah.
right. Thank
Gonzo
you.
just sort
Thank
of
you.
remembered. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Kirsten. Oh,
you
sorry.
asked who the favorite character was, and mine was actually the protagonist. I really liked it. But once you mentioned Ma Lubitsch, one of my favorite lines was early on when he's created,
Mm.
when Gonzo creates his Ma Lubitsch, watching from a small distance, recognizes by the instinctual knowledges of an expat Polish mother that her family has grown by one and is not
Yeah.
perturbed. And that
Oh,
was just so sweet.
Mm.
Yeah. I remember that too. I remember that too. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, clearly it's not really true because her family is grown by an imaginary friend.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
But it is
Yeah.
that's
kind of
helpful.
that thing that you do as a parent, right? When the kids are like, this is my imaginary friend, and you're going, all right, here, we won't sit in that chair because that's where such and such is sitting.
Yeah,
And you
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
humor them
Yeah.
about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
let's put a plane in
Yeah.
front of him.
Mm.
One of the things that I
You are such a cool parent, Kirsten. Can I just say that? Kirsten, I was gonna, sorry, if you don't mind, I was just gonna ask, what was the Tupperware bit again? Because you were talking about how Master Wu was your favorite.
in
That's to do with the
the
cake.
scene where he gets attacked by the ninjas, there's this whole bit, and I don't know if it was really like there was a lot of really interesting oh God, onomatopoeia in the book, which when you're listening to the
Yeah.
audiobook and you're hearing
Yeah.
the audiobook narrator trying to say all the onomatopoeia, it's really interesting. But because he's talking about the click clack, click clack, click clack of the Tupperware container as he's listening to the bells, and then like the guy attacks him and he like throws the Tupperware container at him and like attacks him with the lid and stuff. And there's even a point later in the story where the protagonist goes, "Oh, if only I had some Tupperware."
Oh, yeah, I had
Yep.
forgotten that bit.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Shane, you were going to say something before.
I was going to say something I like about, I don't remember if this is a Ronnie Chung particular or something that the author just keeps doing, referring to various various gong fu and wisdoms and secret arts and stuff. And the author refers to every possible field of knowledge as gong fu. Ma Lubitsch absolutely has the gong fu of an old emigre Polish woman. And there are a few touches like that, which is cool. Like, that's a secret wisdom, and you respect it.
Excellent. Yeah.
It's cool.
I also want to know if I don't know if anybody. I've never studied martial arts, but that whole the thing where he says something like soft form, and he's very respectful of the protagonist and like obviously what he's been trained in. Um, is that a true thing, like soft form and hard form? It is? Yeah, because I've never studied, but I guessed
It
it
depends
was.
on the martial art, but yeah, there are definitely some soft form martial arts where you move with your attacker rather than against them,
Thank you
and
for
use their energy against them. Yeah.
very, very cool, very cool.
And
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Where did that? Because I was away. Repeat the question because that's used in the last fight scene.
Mm.
the
So-
payoff for that is possibly like the excuse for the whole book, or vice versa.
Probably.
So there's a lot of reference, and I think Master Wu talks about soft form and hard form, and our protagonist. So apparently Gonzo's off doing hard form, and our protagonist isn't good at it. So this is also what's weird about the split personality thing. So he's sent, and this is actually something I want to talk about. He's sent to go and study under Master Wu soft form. And then when we meet Ronnie Chung and he recognizes, he said, and Ronnie has a big respect for soft form. And it's something that comes up again about saying, oh, you're like Ronnie's very, I don't know, in his Ronnie way, basically tells people like, you know nothing, you hard form shit heads, like soft form's where it's at kind of thing. And I was like, I was just curious to know, and Lisa was just filling me in, which is good. Is that yes, no, that's totally a thing. It's I'll let Lisa explain because she explained it so much better than I could.
No, I heard Lisa's explanation. I just hadn't remembered where the question came from.
I will add actually though, the thing about soft form is there is a whole lot of fantasy and mystique around it, and this idea, there's this perfect soft form where you can actually, if you breathe right, you can actually touch your opponent in a way that will cause their heart to explode, and
which
we don't
is what
know how much
Master Wu talks about.
yeah, so there's that element of the mystique and the kind of like, oh no, but I can make one up for you.
Yeah,
and there is
no
that
scene when someone comes to study with him and wants to know what the magic is. That was
It does make me
Now
wonder
we have
if
a secret.
Gonzo the child watched a lot of kung fu movies, and a lot of this soft form stuff is the stuff that he's imagined from watching those style of movies.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that Wu tells, like he asks, what are the secrets? Or everybody wants to know the secrets, and Wu's like, there are no secrets. But later, and so he makes some up and gives them these kind of wacky names. And later on in the fight scene with Pestle, he uses these.
Yeah.
And he describes them and he says, oh, this is what it is to move with your person. And he describes the whole fight scene as Pestle thinks that he's chasing this guy, but he's getting more and more tired. And our protagonist is like, he knows that pestle is going to hit right there, but he's no longer there. He's already.
Yeah.
That's worth listening to if you can go ahead.
Yeah, I will. I'll listen to that. All that reminds me is of how the Russians won against won in the war by just they kept retreating. You guys know that story, that war where it was winter was coming, so they were like, well,
Right.
and they were like the Western troops were coming. They were, we're just going to keep. We're used to this shit. You're not, and you're just going to die in the winter. So we're going to keep retreating as it gets colder. And it was they're using it to their advantage, which is pretty clever.
Is that the famous one where was it the French or something, or the Prussians?
Yeah, it was somebody.
It got so cold that their buttons broke because their buttons were made of tin, and tin turns into a powder at high temperature. So they had to concede defeat because they literally couldn't close their coats.
Wow,
that might be that particular battle.
I do know it was. Winter was coming, and they're just like completely unprepared. You know,
I think the tanks too didn't fare very well in the Russian winter either.
It was just like, well, we'll just hang here and let you suffer.
I think it was the Prussian. Yeah.
I mean, it could be Prussia, not Russia. You know, like.
Oh no! Sorry, I think it was Russia. I think you're right. It's Russia, but I think it might have been
the Prussian.
One of them might have been Prussian.
Yeah, because it wasn't Germany then. It was like Prussia and stuff.
Could be Second World War.
Yeah.
The famous ones that I know of are Napoleon's army in 1812, where he went in with like 500,000 men or more and came out with a few tens of thousands.
Wow.
Yep. And they took Moscow and they pushed the Russians back, and ended up having to retreat back over the land that two armies had already foraged over and barely made it out. And yes, World War II, absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about, I'm trying to remember where it is. I wanted to ask about geography. I was a bit lost. The only thing I could think was this is not this world. This is another world, because obviously Agatia doesn't actually exist. But I spent a lot of time going, is this a foil for somewhere in the Middle East or in Asia? And then also, because Cricklewood is a real place, but Cricklewood, whatever it's called,
is not.
Cove is not. So my big question was, is there a channel? Because I was trying to work out how Pipe 60 got across from Agatia to England, because they were suddenly back and settled. And getting married in the church. I was very confused because I was like, okay, yeah. So I wanted to know how others got on with the geography, and I have to admit that was something, because I am someone who likes a map. How did others get on with the geography of this world? I kind of just had to go, it's hand wavy, deal with it. But that's.
I got the sense of Europe, maybe like north of Italy, like and somewhere in the kind of near Middle East was where those fights were, but then they're
because the French existed. He referred to the French. So this is why I was confused.
Agatia kind of gave me like Balkans vibes, but I don't
know. Interesting. I got real Middle Eastern, Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan kind of vibes from all the goats and the sheep.
That makes sense. Maybe was it deliberately meant to be?
And the cutlasses. That was the other thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, didn't he say where he went to like university? He described it as really hot, like it's in like Florida or the tropics or something. Well, Florida.
Or his uni was hot.
Yeah, his uni. He described being really hot because he was talking about how he was used to the heat of the name of where his university is. But Agatia was a whole other level.
I do not remember that.
Where the hell? I'm imagining Oxford or New England or something.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining too.
Tropical.
I was like, he's in some university town. It's not necessarily like the best, but he's up in Leeds or something. Is kind of where my head was.
Yeah, except he describes it as hot. It was really hot there, and I'm like, oh, now I'm confused.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think British people's hot is the same as Australian people's hot.
Holy.
Yes,
No.
it's not that
Saying
different.
that, I did the summer, one of the summers I was there, it was like 45 degrees for
But
like
why
three
did
odd
you
days
think
in
he
a
was
row.
in England?
Why do I
I
think he
thought
was
he was
in?
in New England or New York or somewhere.
Oh, so
Oh,
maybe I
do
was.
you?
Yeah, at first
Maybe.
no,
Why
what
did
did
I
you
think
think
it
it
was in
was?
England? I couldn't tell
Well,
you.
the
Cricklewood.
narrator's English, but
Oh, because he says,
Writer's
doesn't he
English.
mention Essex?
Yes, he mentions Essex. He mentioned
Really?
Cricklewood, although it's Cricklewood Cove and it's Cricklewood something around, which is a real place. He mentioned Essex.
I think
He
the
doesn't
Essex
mention
thing is what
London.
made me
Like, you're
think
right. He
England.
doesn't mention any of the big, like they're just like
what
satellite towns.
what were you saying,
Yeah.
Melissa?
Oh, I definitely had Europe. Yeah, Jarndyce University, which doesn't exist, of course.
Jarndyce.
Yeah.
Jarndyce.
Yeah,
I
but
think
yeah,
in the war they also say the Americans were doing some things as well,
Yeah.
separate to the group they were
okay,
part of.
all right.
Maybe.
So that
So
Right.
suggests that he's not American.
Yeah.
Did
I
the
guess.
audiobook guy have a British accent? I can't
He
remember.
did too, which
That
also
probably
made
was
me.
what made me go that. Oh,
Yeah. And all the towns have very British names. They weren't real names, but it was like, instead of Hampstead Heath, it was like not Shire, but like, Hampton
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
something that sounded very close to it. He would come up or, Bassingwaite Common, things like this where you go, it's a very British sounding kind of place. The
Well,
school where they
yeah.
went, Assumpta, that was also interesting. Assumpta, Elizabeth's mum.
Assumption Soames?
Assumption,
Soames.
was that her name?
Assumption
Let's
Science.
talk about her.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, because they're
But,
very like what's the word,
delightful.
puritanical, and again that
yeah,
does not
but
give me
that
an
was all a
English
ploy.
vibe.
It was all a ploy.
She
Yeah,
might be
except
my favorite character.
I think I had to give up on where in the world is his actual place because
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, Assumption
Soames.
Soames. Yeah.
Right, right.
What was her nickname?
The Evangelist.
Thank you, the
Yes.
evangelist. Yeah, and that she was. I was very lost. I actually have to admit, I got a bit lost during the whole school, like what they wanted or what they
Mm.
didn't want, because she was like. But then it made sense when it turns out she was like hiring. Yeah. Anyway, that she was actually. Yeah. It's almost like you've got um, the most puritanical person within the Catholic Church school, within a Catholic school, but they're actually like they're acting that way, but then they're just hiring all the teachers who say, well, it's that way, we should actually make sure we teach it, and then they actually ensures it's taught well. Or like it was reverse psychology the entire time. It was very
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. But I also was a bit confused because I'm trying to think like the protagonist went and met with Assumption about going to Jarndyce,
Yeah.
but she would have known this person as. Do you think she knew that Gonzo had a split personality?
but
No, I
I'm
presume that was Gonzo
yeah,
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point.
But
yeah. I thought
Gonzo
it was
got
actually
in with a
Gonzo talking
scholarship.
to
He was
her.
already going, and then the protagonist didn't
Oh,
know what he
that's
was doing.
right.
Oh, maybe
That,
it's part of Gonzo's story for the protagonist because he's clearly his world is so well defined. I really do think that Gonzo was quite deeply I don't know if enmeshed is the right word, but part of Gonzo's whole coping mechanism was so deeply to have this
Yeah.
part of him that imagines this person in their life and having to answer it all the time. Maybe Gonzo fabricated a whole scenario where his best friend, imaginary friend, can be with him. A little bit like in if you've seen the movie, which is based on a real person, A Beautiful Mind, which talks about where he talks about one of his best friends at university.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a spoiler, although this was actually a real thing. The guy, I've forgotten his name, the amazing mathematician, actually fabricated people in such a real way. He genuinely believed that they were real people.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did just find something out about the Ada Katir,
Oh yeah.
which was that.
Can I just say on
Go.
wrapping up this topic, alternately, Gonzo is in deep denial about ever having had any questions about his future. So I never went to the headmaster and asked, what the fuck should I do for college? That was my imaginary friend, is that
Gotcha.
memory, because I didn't like that
right.
memory at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to pretend that I got because it's also, I'm going to pretend that I got a rugby scholarship or whatever
Yeah.
he got. Remember? Yeah.
And I don't know which one the author wants
Yeah,
us to
because
think
it
of.
definitely felt like Assumption was having that conversation, because that's also how he finds out Elizabeth is, which all that felt very real, and like
Mm,
also like the setup and stuff. So,
Okay.
and also because she hugs him at the wedding,
yes.
Mm.
she
Yeah.
comes up, and because Elizabeth's still in hiding, and she comes up and gives him a big hug. So maybe she always kind of knew, and then it was like, this is where you need to, and like all the strings that he thought she pulled, she didn't really need to. You know what I mean? Like it could have been just like, I just need to convince your other personality that that's where you're going. But it
Right,
also really
maybe.
felt like the protagonist flourished at university. I don't know what other people thought, but we didn't really, that's really where the personalities, they were spending time, because
Yeah.
the protagonist got really involved in the woman he was shagging. I don't know. There was a lot of
The
shagging in
communist
uni.
group or the
Yeah. Which also
revolutionary
felt
group.
very uni, right up to the point that Copland took them all off to
That
like
was where I was
torture
like,
them.
what the fuck? We were in, like, I thought you, every time you thought, oh, I know where the story was going,
We're
it'd take
about
a
to
right
continue.
Yeah.
turn and you'd be like, oh, okay, so we're getting like a backstory, university days, la la la. Oh, now there's ninjas. Okay. And then you pivot away from that, and then you get, and he's going to get, whatever. He's doing uni and he's protesting with these people and having lots of sex. And then it's like, oh, now you're being tortured in an electric chair. And it was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck
Yeah.
is going on?
And then the one that really brought me around again, because it's like, this isn't really a fantasy novel. Like, I mean, I really thought this was going to be a fantasy novel, and and then there's a centaur. Okay, what?
Oh, that was
That
really, I
that
That
actually,
was
was a
awesome.
pull me back in moment.
yeah,
I
but I was actually very not upset, but like that was actually quite a moving scene,
yeah.
I have to say,
Yeah.
considering. And
Yeah.
I also
Very
thought it was
sad.
really masterfully done in showing you that the other is still deserving of humanity,
Mm.
if that makes sense. And then when
Yeah.
he kind of like, and again, like he's imagining what has happened to, but it was very sad and very moving, and just like, okay, yeah. Anyway, I thought that was very well done.
I just mean the actual introduction of that person who had
Oh,
into a
yeah.
centaur
Yeah.
was done really suddenly. It was just like,
Oh,
and there was a centaur, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
yeah. Yeah.
That
Because
was
up
Yeah.
fun.
until that point, there hadn't really been any fantasy creatures, or
No.
Yeah.
hadn't
And
met
actually, the way
we
he
hadn't found
described
met the
it, I was,
thousand, or
yeah.
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 Sorry,
I want to
Lisa,
get back to talking about what that made me think of, but Alyssa, you were going to say something about Adikatia.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, they do describe the Katir Mountains are just eastward of the Himalayas. The original
Ah,
Okay.
population was wiped out, and Indians, Pakistanis, Chinese, and another
Okay.
group just filled it in, and then the British came and colonized it. So
right.
it's
Sounds like
somewhere in
Malaysia.
Central Asia there. Yeah.
We think it's Malaysia?
No, but what you're
Oh,
describing
Central.
has a lot of similarity with Malaysia
Right.
Mountain.
and
Just
Kind of
Vietnam.
Necessities.
temperate and
Nepal,
tropical.
Bhutan. What is it? Bhutan's up in that region, right?
They really make it just very generic, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
It is, yeah.
That
Yeah.
was probably the idea, that they didn't want to
Yeah.
actually use a real country as an example. So they're going to use elements from whole bunch of different places to kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
why in my head Adikatir was more like where Bangladesh is, or something, like on the Bay of Bengal, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
I'm
that's
not
what I was.
saying, I think I might be wrong. Maybe it's a bit more of a
Yeah. No,
touristy
I'm with
vibe,
you,
but
Lisa. I was like, I had in my head it was where Asia, not Asia Minor, Asia Major, which is India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, all that kind of, Pakistan, etc., met. Um, is it Middle East or Arabia? The stance. I kind of had it there, which is why I was like, "Wow, how did we end up in Cricklewood so fast?" Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
that
was
was a bit.
something I was like, "You guys were going less than a K a day." Like,
Right.
What did you guys think of the whole concept of um of the stuff that was leashed on the world?
really scary.
Yeah. It's like
I
this
got
bomb with that
confused.
information So
Yeah, it
anything
took him
seems disintegrated.
explaining it a bit for me to get it. Like it took,
Yeah.
I presume it's because, which in hindsight, I realize he's done really well. Is like, how do you explain something that just makes stuff go away? Like, and it took me time to realize that what he was describing as far as shadows and that he talked about flickers. Do you guys remember flickers or like,
Mm.
there was something or like shimmers? Was it shimmers?
Yeah.
Maybe.
The
Yeah.
idea of information, though, I thought it was like very like quantum physics kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
And
like,
having
oh, this
more.
is like that shit that Matt watches where I watch the first 5 minutes and go, oh yeah, no, I'm getting it, and then he keeps talking and I go, no, I've lost it.
Is it that Australian guy?
Don't
Is
get
it
it.
the Australian guy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Space
yeah,
Time, that show Space
yeah,
Time.
yeah.
And
I'm the
Oh.
same.
sometimes when
And
I'm
then
watching it, I'm like, yep, totally get exactly what you're talking about. And
yeah,
sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry, are you even speaking English?
Yeah. So it's like
yeah,
matter without any of the information. And having
yeah.
no information, any random thought, it
Mm-hmm.
will like grab that as information. So your
Yeah,
deepest, darkest nightmares are like,
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
No, it is actually. I never realized that, but it absolutely is. Absolutely is.
When it all
Um,
first started happening, it
Mm.
reminded me, especially with the centaurs and stuff, it reminded me of this X-Files episode. And I don't know if any of you guys know X-Files very well, but there's an episode, well, there's a
been a
two
while.
episode one called Dreamland and Dreamland 2,
Oh.
which
Okay.
is mostly a comedy one. And if you ever feel like watching it, it's probably pretty standalone, where they have this experiment in Area 51 that sends out this like wave, and everything that was in the with this circle kind of gets swapped. So like there's this bit where
Oh,
there's this Native American Hopi woman that gets swapped with this soldier. So like he's in her body and she's in his, and they're like she can't speak English, she's talking in Hopi, and he's like
wow.
she's like it's him in this old lady's body, and he's like standing up like a soldier and stuff. But there's also a bit like where like if you were nearby something that wasn't another person, instead of getting swapped in their body, like there's a bit where a guy's half in a rock, and there's
Wow.
like and that was what that reminded me of, was like, oh, because I was wondering if it was something like that where things that were near each other were getting swapped with each other kind of thing.
Mm,
There was another
mm,
bit as
in a
well.
way.
yeah.
Very funny episode though. Like I know I
What,
didn't make it sound very
what was the
funny.
name of that again?
So the episode is called
Dreamland.
Dreamland. It has
Dreamland.
what the fuck is his name? The guy from Spinal Tap?
Oh,
Which
no.
one? Christopher
No.
Guest?
Michael
The
Michael?
the American guy, not the British guy.
Oh God, what is his name? He's in a bunch of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he's in it and he's hilarious. And so
Yeah.
in the episode, his character, who is like this guy who works at Area 51 and is very disillusioned with his job, gets swaps bodies with Mulder, but he doesn't want anybody to know that they've swapped because he quite doesn't want to really be an Area 51 guy again. So he just decides he's going to take Mulder's life. And Mulder suddenly turns up at this guy's house and his wife's yelling at him because he's come home late and stuff. And Mulder's like, I don't know what's going on. And it's very funny. But
Wow.
Yeah,
this was what this reminded me of, because I was thinking of this, this guy that was stuck in the rock.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
a turtle. I think there's something about a turtle. I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, there's an
Mm.
episode of Tales Beyond the Loop where that kind of happens and you swap, and yeah, there's two guys that swap, two boys, and one has a hard life and one doesn't, and the other one just doesn't want. And then and this is fine because I'm going to spoil it, but the guy is trying to, the one who wants his life back goes to swap, and there's actually a robot in the forest. He ends up swapping with the robot. And so, yeah, the not sentient robot ends up in his body, and so he ends up like the body ends up in a ward, and his parents are mourning him, but he's now inhabiting the robot. So it's actually
I
really
know,
tragic.
yeah, I know that episode. Or
You've
that
seen that episode,
story.
yeah. And I think it was
Yes.
around about then
What series is that?
it's called
Tales
Tales
from the
Beyond the
Loop.
Loop.
Oh,
It's really beautifully done. It's on Prime.
Oh.
But yeah, they're quite dark. So I think I did about 3 or 4 of them and was like, I can't do any more. I was like, I really love this, but these are very dark.
Mm.
So yeah.
That was
I was
Um
going to say about the X-Files episode, I did like how that show did occasionally be like, we're doing this one as a comedy.
Yeah, the
Well,
comedy
did they
episodes
have
are
a
always my
musical
favorite.
episode? Because that would have really brought it.
Oh, I
No.
don't
I,
know. Before
well,
the
I don't know.
invention, I think.
There was the guy who sang all the Cher songs.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, though he wasn't singing them, he was just listening to them. He was the great muchacho.
Yeah,
That was a great episode. That was
yeah,
it
yeah.
was all in black and white, and it was an
See,
homage to
I like that episode
Frankenstein.
too, but a friend of mine would bitch about it and say, "Oh, it's like it's an episode at a time," and I'm like, "That's why I like it. It's an episode at a time." So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to the book.
Shane and I met on the internet, and this was back in '93 or so when X-Files had the episode of the guy who met people online and then sucked the fat out of them.
Yes. That episode was called Too Shy.
Too shy.
Wow.
And drained them of their life force. And
yeah, Kirsten and Matt also met on the internet, but they met through their love of X-Files. So it's very romantic. So, yeah, geography,
book.
characters, Ronnie and the cars. Yeah. Is there any other plot twists that I like, or what happens in the end? You reckon I should listen to everyone? There seems to be a lot
I like that the found 1,000 come back again at one point.
Oh, they
Yeah.
do? Oh, good. If they come back for the
Yeah.
final fight, because that does sound like it's worth listening to. These chapters some of them are an hour and a half long.
Whoa.
Wow.
Like I was looking at them going, how many chapters? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm only 2/3 of the way through this book.
I screwed myself over because I started listening when we first announced this book, and then when it got pushed back, I stopped listening because I was like, I'm not going to remember it. I'm going to start again later. And then when I started again, I was like, oh God, it's so long. I'm not going to re-listen to everything. I'm going to find where I was up to. And I listened. I was like, I'll start listening to the beginning of chapter 2 and see where that was. And I started listening to the beginning of chapter 2, and I was like, no, I've definitely listened to this part. So I jumped to chapter 3, and I'm listening to chapter 3 going, what the fuck is going on? Because chapter 3 was where he met the guy. He got the job from the guy that tortured him, and he's talking about how could he shake this guy's hand and it makes him feel sick after all this stuff he did to him. And I'm like, what did he do? And I'm like, I must have missed a whole bunch. And it's because I didn't realize that the chapters were so fucking long that I'd listened to half of chapter 2 but not the whole thing. So I had to go back and re-listen to chapter 2. I'm like, it would have been just listen to the whole thing from the beginning.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was it's definitely and I wanted to make sure I read it, Alyssa, because I was like, I don't want to, I wanted to read this and I was committed to it. And even if I didn't finish it, I was like, I want to share that. I think there's lots of good stuff here. There's just a lot. It's a lot.
It's very self-indulgent. You asked at the start about his other books. I can't remember if they're less self-indulgent. I think so. Yeah.
Do you? Because I remember thinking they weren't as good and possibly equally as difficult to figure out what was going on.
Yes.
Some of them were better than others. I have gone off a bit.
Yeah.
I haven't read any of his new ones, the John Le Carre.
The spy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to admit, I've also been like you, Alyssa, is that I had a book that I'd read back in my late teens, early 20s, and I loved it back then. At Matt Ruff, he was one of my favorite authors back then, and I wanted the club to read it. I had such fond memories of it. And it's after you kind of spend time with people dissecting books and understanding plot and characters, and I was like, this is like, and it was another first novel, like it was his first novel, and it was a hit, but I'd read other Matt Ruff since then, and he definitely had improved as an author. And going back to it, I was like, oh, I feel really bad. Like this is not as mature as or as good as I remember. 19-year-old me loved this. So, sometimes hindsight, because I can see like this is 2008, like this got released, like this is got some history on it. So I've also been that person who's like gone, I remember this being amazing, and then going, yeah, it's still good, it's just not Not as good
But
as
the
that.
difference between 2008 and 2015 is nothing. And 2015 was like last year.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I had this thing the other day. I was talking to Kevin about it, and I said, I was like going, okay. So I was like, okay, so 2020 pandemic, yeah, lost my job, great. And then I was like, okay, 20, and I was like, okay, when did I go and work there? I was working there in 22, 23, we got the house ready. What the fuck did I do in 2021? Except go through an extension. I do not remember because one, we're going through the pandemic, and two, it was just, I think, I don't remember. I've
Quarantine?
lost a year during that pandemic that I don't remember what I did.
You quarantined?
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
much
we
of
did. I think
anything.
that was a year we got 2020 was cancelled. And one of the years I think it was 22, we were supposed to meet up, right, Kirsten? And then was it 22 we got cancelled?
I think 2020 we skipped, and then
We skipped.
2021 we did a special online one
Okay.
because we were supposed to do
Maybe I worked 2021.
It'll be on your jumper.
I know. I just don't remember. I'm missing a year because I know that. Yeah,
Wow.
No, I
I'm
hear
missing a
ya.
year.
I
I'm
hear
missing
ya.
a year. But yeah, there you go. But it's a bit weird when you kind of go 2025, pandemic 2020.
Feels like we're approaching
I
the
think we're
end of
done.
our
I think we're
talk.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing it with us, Alyssa. It was definitely it was a good, interesting read. We love a bit of nonsense.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Mel.
How did you hear the words, we were done?
I was very
That good.
lucky. I was in just a little bit before it, going, "What's Sarah talking about with the dates?" But I figure I'll ask after we've finished up. So good wrap up, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, all. Thank you all for reading, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much too, because I really did want
Oh,
to discuss it, so I'm really glad.
Yeah, me
and
too. Even though I couldn't get it
for
done, I wanted to talk about it.
one more thing is one of his later books, Angel Maker, was nominated for a pretty prestigious sci-fi prize.
Okay.
So other people might think that his work is great as well. Yeah, while I said that I hadn't been moved later, other people feel differently. Yeah.
Thanks for anybody out in the internet land for watching. Our next book pick is Witch King by Martha Wells, a very popular author in our group.
Has anybody read it yet?
Not yet. I'm saving myself.
I haven't been able to get into
Hi,
any
Internet
other
land.
Martha Wells yet.
Hi,